actions and pushing forward some of the kind of provisions in those actions, especially as you look at red flag laws and those types of programs. More than $300 million went to about 49 states and territories to put that into place in those states. So there is actions that we have taken. The thing is, the president cannot do it alone. You know this. There is a legislative process that needs to happen, and Congress needs to act. And I listed out to ban assault weapons. Yes, the president mentions that over and over again. And high-capacity magazines, require safe storage of firearms, require background checks for all gun safeties, eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. Those are the things that need legislative actions. And so he cannot do it alone. And so we need Congress to act. And if you think about assault weapons ban, we know when the president was involved in 1994 to get that done, we saw gun violence go down, and when it sunset 10 years later, it went back up. So we know what could work, and that's why you continue to hear the president calling on Congress to take action.
So, but you're not announcing new actions now, and is the sense the president's done everything that he can himself?
Well, the president is always going to find ways, so is his team. Here, we have the Domestic Policy Council, you have other offices here at the White House, you have the Department of Justice. We're always going to find and figure out ways that we can take another step outside of all of the historic steps that this president has taken to announce another way to protect communities. But the president has done the work. Now we need Congress to act.
And just to follow Ken's question to Kirby before about the press conference on this trip, 4-day trip to 2 countries, why can't the president take questions from the press?
Right now, we just don't have anything on the books for a press conference at this moment. The president always loves to take your questions, shouted questions. Look, when it comes to these types of events, as you know, being the president of at one point of the association, these are relationships that we have, right, with these countries. So when it comes to 2+2s or anything like that, clearly that is not just on us, that is also on the country that we're visiting. But as far as a standalone press conference, I just don't have anything to share at this time.
Beyond seeking a stay, how do you plan to respond to the abortion movement?
So look, I don't want to get ahead of the courts here. As you know, that's something that we're very mindful of. The Department of Justice were quick to act, as you know, as you mentioned, the stay, and we're going to continue to move forward in that fashion. It probably is going to go up to the Supreme Court, which we feel pretty confident that we're going to win. But we're going to be very clear here. And I talked about this at the beginning, the disinformation, misinformation that's out there. Mifepresto is still very much available, very much available right now for women who need it or providers who need it at this time. And so, look, this is a president and an administration that's going to continue to fight to make sure that women have the health care that they need, to make sure that they make their own decision when it comes to their own body. And I also mentioned this too. This is what we're seeing currently right now. It's part of the plan, right? It's part of what we've been hearing from extreme MAGA Republicans in these different state houses, and of course national Republicans saying that they want a national abortion ban. This is part of this. And so they're going to continue to take those actions. I think we've seen more than 300 pieces of legislation coming out of state houses to take away a woman's freedom, a woman's right to make her own decision, a decision that should be between herself and her doctor. And so, look, the president's going to continue to fight for people's freedoms, in this particular women's freedom. And we saw what the American people said during the midterms. Like, they want us to continue to do that, continue to fight for their freedom.
Can you confirm on that? So the administration is going to comply with this federal judge's order?
Look, we are going to always follow the law, always. But doesn't mean that that we're not going to fight. Doesn't mean that we're not going to, as you know, DOJ has appealed this, and we'll continue to fight in the courts.
And so will the administration then move to expedite reapproval of Mifepresto?
What I can say is that right now DOJ has already stayed, as Steve mentioned, and is fighting to maintain the stay and ultimately win the case, as we believe, in the Supreme Court. And so we're going to let DOJ do their work, the Department of Justice do their work.
Can the FDA reapprove this
quickly? So What I can say is that we stand by the FDA's approval of mifepristone, and we are prepared for a long legal fight. That's what I can say from here. That's what we are committed to doing for the providers who are making sure that this is available to women and also for women out there. But again, it's still available. As we know, this is a decision is stayed for 7 days starting from this past Friday, and so the status quo remains. But again, we are ready to fight. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. AOC suggests that the administration should just ignore the ruling, and she said that, quote, "We know that the executive branch has an enforcement discretion." Is that true?
So this is similar, I think, to what Terry was asking me. Look, we understand the frustration, right? We get the frustration regarding this decision, absolutely. And that's why we were quick to act. That's why you saw DOJ take action. Basically what I said to Terry, we stand by FDA's approval of mifepristone, and we are prepared to have a long legal fight here. That is our commitment to women out there. That is our commitment to Americans across the country. But I'll say this, it is dangerous. But as a precedent, as a dangerous precedent is set for a court to set aside the FDA's expert judgment regarding a drug safety and efficacy, it would also set a dangerous precedent for this administration to disregard, right, a binding decision. So that's what I'm getting to. But again, we are ready to fight. This is going to be a long fight. We understand this. We stand by FDA's approval of mifepristone. This is a pill that's been around for more than 20 years. I believe 22 years. It's been used in 60 countries. So of course, this is something that we approve, and we stand by FDA.
Just to be clear, for people watching at home who are listening to progressives saying, the administration actually has an enforcement discretion and they could ignore this, you disagree with that?
So what I'm saying is there is a process in place for appealing this type of decision, and we will pursue that process vigorously. That's what the American people can count on from the Biden-Harris administration, and do everything that we can to prevail in the courts. That's the commitment that we have.
Okay. And to follow up on Zeke, you mentioned that the decision whether to hold a 2x2 here at the White House is made by both the administration as well as the visiting party. But is the decision whether to have a press conference abroad in Ireland a unilateral decision, or are the Irish weighing in on that too?
No, I think I was very clear. I said when it comes to a press conference, standalone press conference, which does not include the country, we just don't have a decision. Well, we're just not going to happen. It's not in the books to happen on this trip.
But it's your decision alone, right? The Irish aren't weighing.
I mean, if it's a press conference that the president is leading on his own, yes, it's a standalone. That's why I said a standalone press conference that is not happening on this trip.
I'm just not hearing a reason why you're not having one then, because to not have one here, you're saying it's because it's not just up to us?
No, I didn't say that. I said when it comes to a 2+2, regardless if we're away or regardless if the country's coming here, we do have, that is a discussion that we have with the country, right? That is a conversation that's had, and we do not do that unilaterally. So I was making a comparison. I was laying out that process, which I know every time a head of state visits, or even if we go to another country, this question comes up of a 2+2. And so I was just laying out the process, as I've done many times at this podium. I'm just saying at this time we do not have a press conference, a standalone press conference for this president. I know that it is of interest. I'm just giving you the answer on that. Go ahead, Mom.
Hey, Karine, did the White House ask HHS Secretary Becerra to clarify his comments on possibly ignoring the Texas order and saying everything is on the table when he was on the Sunday shows yesterday?
I believe they put out a statement. HHS put out a statement making that clear that the administration is not going to ignore a ruling. So I'm going to just point you to the statement from HHS.
And then, to be clear, you also mentioned you expect this could go up to the Supreme Court. Are you suggesting that the White House supports the Department of Justice seeking an emergency appeal with the Supreme Court now while it is still trying to get it blocked?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying ultimately we believe we can win if this case in the Supreme Court, if necessary. But this is something that the Department of Justice certainly is going to go through their process. What we're saying is we're prepared for a long legal fight, and that's the promise that we can make to women, millions of women across the country right now.
And can you share what, if anything, Vice President Harris is doing on this issue either today or in the coming days, given her work on abortion?
I think you'll continue to hear from the Vice President on this issue. This is an issue that's very important to her. She has been very vocal on what's currently happening, on especially when you see extreme Republicans continuing to want to take away the rights of women when they make this important decision, about their own body. I've mentioned the 300 plus pieces of legislation that has come out of state houses. She's been very vocal. She's been steadfast on this, and I'm pretty sure you'll be hearing from her in the near future. Good, Ken.
We're expecting the EPA to issue new tailpipe emission rules this week. How do you expect those to go beyond some of the targets the president has made for getting new electric vehicles out in the open? And also just how does he balance this need of having tougher emissions on one hand while the possibility that this will raise costs for consumers?
So look, I'm certainly not going to get ahead of an ongoing policy process. Want to be careful here. But look, when it comes to climate crisis, it requires ambitious actions. And the president has been delivering on those ambitious actions. As you know, when he walked into this administration, he said climate change was one of the 4 crises that he believed his administration needed to deal with. So his Investing in America agenda has already sparked over $100 billion in private sector investment in electric vehicle charging and manufacturing. Since 2020, the number of electric vehicle models has doubled, EV sales have tripled, and the number of EV charging posts is up 40%. So look, this wouldn't be the first time that someone has bet against this president, as you hear us say many times, or you hear him say about himself, and it certainly won't be the last time. He'll continue to prove them all wrong. When it comes to lowering cost for the American people, this is, as you know, something that the president, when you look at his economic agenda, when you look at his economic policy, lowering costs for the American people is something that is at the center of that, is a priority for him, and he'll continue to certainly do that. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks. Corinne, just as we sit here, we just now have another notice that there was another shooting in Louisville with 1 injured and 1 dead unrelated.
Yeah.
These two, let me drill down a little bit on what you've said. I know the administration has taken action the most that it can, but has the action this administration has taken regarding gun violence in this country included speaking to members of the GOP, inviting them up here to discuss the issue with other legislative leaders? What exactly has, because as you well know, the president has a great reputation for making deals. He did it with the bipartisan infrastructure deal. So what has he done specifically?
So, look, Brian, first of all, as you know, I have not seen those reportings, so I know if that certainly is the case, certainly I want to say our hearts go out to the injured and their families. And so again, another devastating day of shootings that we're seeing in our communities. And this is why we continue to call on Congress, Republicans in Congress, to take action. This is not okay. Our communities need to be safer. I'm going to get to your question. Our communities need to be safer. Our schools need to be safe. There's no reason that kids should be going to school and teachers should be teaching at schools and be worried about their safety, be worried about an active shooter coming into their school. There should be no reason why places of worship should be concerned about that as they're praying, as they're in their, again, place of worship. And so this is devastating. This is devastating to hear, and we need to see some courage. I'm going to keep saying that because that's what we need to see from Republicans in Congress. Now, to your question, there was a bipartisan piece of legislation that was passed just this past summer on gun violence, and it was called the Safer Communities Act, as you know. And so that was something, because of this president, because of this administration, was able to bring both sides together, the other side in particular, to come up with this piece of legislation that is now into law clearly. And it was the first major piece of legislation on this issue that we had seen in 30 years. And so that is something that the president was able to do. But as grateful as he was to both Democrats and Republicans for that piece of legislation, we need to do more. And he's going to continue to do that. And to your other part of your question, look, we have our White House offices here, including the Legislative Affairs Office, who's continuing to have conversations with members of Congress. I don't have anything to read out on particular conversations on any issues, but there are tons of issues, as you know, that we are always having conversations about when it comes to Congress. But look, we've taken action. This president has taken historic actions on this issue. He's not sat back. He's not put his feet on the table and let the issue pass him by. He's taken action.
Is he inviting him up
But
here?
he has. He has. We were able to do a bipartisan piece of legislation. Look, we have done the work. There's a bipartisan piece of legislation that was signed into law by this president this past summer, and he has done a historic amount of work, even recently, just when the last time he visited the West Coast, to deal with this issue, to deal with this very issue. I'm going to keep going.
Finally, anytime he'd like to show up here in this room, I'm sure all of us, I can speak for all of us, saying we'd welcome him here at any time.
I understand. Go ahead.
There have been several questions about presidential travel.
Yeah.
About 5 weeks ago, President Biden said that he would be going to East Palestine, Ohio at some point. Does the president still feel the need to visit Ohio?
Well, once the president said it, so I will keep that. He keeps to his word. Don't have a trip to lay out or preview for you at this time, but I'm going to just let the president's word stand.
So we should expect him there at some point.
If he says the president said he's expecting to at some time, the president means what he says. I just don't have a trip to preview at this time. Yeah.
Thanks, Karine. I wanted to follow up on electric vehicles. You mentioned the investment. Some of the companies investing in EV battery plants here in the U.S. are Chinese companies. Is the administration doing anything to stop China from cashing in on green energy goals?
I don't have anything to share on China specifically as it relates to electric vehicles. As you know, the president is committed to this. You see that in his Inflation Reduction Act. You see that in the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is very keyed in on making sure that his agenda on dealing with climate crisis is dealt with. So don't have anything on China. You know where we stand on China. We want competition, not conflict. That's where we have always moved with China. You heard my colleague speak specifically on where that relationship is. Just don't have anything specifically on the electric vehicles.
Chinese companies coming in and building EV plants in
Again,
Michigan?
I just don't have anything specific as it relates to China electric vehicles. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Karine. Two questions, two different issues. First of all, on the abortion pill case, you said earlier in the briefing that you believe that this particular case will get to the U.S. Supreme Court, and you also expressed confidence that you win at the U.S. Supreme Court. What gives you that level of confidence?
Because let's not forget, we're talking about mifepristone, which has been around for 20 plus years, which is also around in 60 different countries, and it is something that FDA is allowed to approve. They have approved this, and we stand by the FDA when it comes to this. And I said, if necessary, right? We believe we will win. We will win this long fight if it goes to the Supreme Court, if necessary, if that's what indeed occurs. Because we are committed. We are committed to this issue. We are committed to making sure that women have access to mifepristone, but also can make their own decision when it comes to their own body, when it comes to this type of important reproductive health care decision that women should have. It is their freedom. It should be their freedom to have this.
And then the second question has to do with the lack of a press conference during the president's upcoming trip, and the lack of press conference that we see in general from this White House. I represent a news organization that owns 113 television stations, and a question that I'm often asked, and I don't know the answer to, so I'll ask you that question. Is the administration trying to protect the president from our questions? Please, answer that question.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So why the lack of any interaction in a formal setting to have a press conference?
I mean, the president takes shouted questions. I understand, John. I understand. I understand. I've dealt with this question about 3 times already. I understand. It is the job of you all to ask this question to me. Totally get that, and that's not a problem at all. But certainly, the president many times has stood in front of all of you, has taken questions on his own. because he wanted to see what was all on your minds. He wanted to see what the questions you all were going to ask him, and he wanted to answer them directly. That has happened multiple times, many times during this administration, and that will certainly continue to be. When it comes to a formal press conference, I don't have anything to share with you at this time.
Just one last thing.
Yeah, sure.
Just to button it up. You recognize that as it relates to prior administrations, the president's predecessor, President Obama, President George W. Bush. I've been here long enough to have covered President Bill Clinton. This is not the norm. The norm is we do get an opportunity to ask the questions to the president about domestic and foreign policy issues in a formal setting at some point. And you choose that point, but we haven't had that opportunity in quite some time.
So I'll say this, it is also unprecedented that a president takes as many shouted questions as this president has, and he has.
I know the last
Okay.
administration, I'll tell you, almost every day on this
Okay,
building.
well, we'll certainly get the data and share that with all of you. I hear, John, I hear your question, I heard Zeke's question, I hear you. I hear you on the press conference, on a formal press conference. We get this probably every couple of months when you guys ask us about a formal press conference. I don't have anything to share with all of you at this time, and I'll just leave it there. Okay, Jeremy.
Thanks, Green. A few moments ago, you reiterated the president's support for an assault weapons ban, but in his statement this afternoon, the president called for safe storage of firearms, universal background checks, and eliminating liability protections for gun manufacturers. Was that an intentional omission of the assault weapons ban, or is that a shift in strategy?
Not a shift in strategy at all. We were just being mindful to the incoming information that was currently coming in from Louisville, and so at the time we didn't know what was exactly, we didn't have all the information. So we just wanted to be mindful to that specific event, if you will, in Louisville. But that our commitment and our calling out for the ban of assault weapons has not changed.
And in that statement, the president lays out the pretty dire consequences of inaction, talking in particular about Republicans. We hear from the president when these shootings happen, obviously. But does the president feel that he has made full use of the bully pulpit to match the dire consequences that he's warning of? I mean, is there not more that he could be doing to lobby Republicans to bring this issue to the fore every day?
I would say this, Jeremy, anytime the president uses the bully pulpit, he is talking directly to the American people, and I would say directly to Congress as well. This is a president that has been committed to this issue, not just as president, but as vice president and also as senator. He talked about the 1994, the assault weapons ban that he led on, and what we saw, the data that came from there, and what we saw in those 10 years before it sunset. And so I've said this many times before today in this briefing room, and I'll say it again. This is a president that has taken historic actions when it comes to gun violence and protecting communities and really dealing with an issue that is an epidemic. Sadly, when we saw the shooting in Nashville, he spoke on it about 3 times on that issue. And I would easily argue when the president speaks, people listen and want to hear what he has to say.
Does he feel he's doing the most he possibly can?
I think when you've made taken historic action on an issue from the executive, this executive branch, and trying to telling your teams to do everything that you can to figure out what else can be done. That is a president that is active, that is taking action, and you know, there's a legislative process to this. We need Congress to take action, and that's where we are. Charlotte, I forgot about you, Charlotte. I'm so sorry. Yeah, really quickly, and then we have a guest.
So, what kind of guidance has the White House been providing to states and to medical providers in the wake of this ruling on mifepristone? And what is your message generally to women around the country, to medical providers who may not be sure what the future of this drug is and may have concerns?
Look, what we have said, taking your last question first, is what we have said is reproductive rights is a fundamental freedom. It is a fundamental right, and it is a medical decision that should be made between a woman, and her doctor, without government interference. Again, without government interference. And so we've been clear about that. A vast majority of Americans agree with us. We saw the outcomes of the midterms, but again, Republicans and officials, I've said this over and over again, in the State House across the country have introduced more than 300 bills restricting abortion so far this year alone. So what we have done is we're coordinating with state leaders who are fighting to protect reproductive rights, and we'll continue to do that as we're going through this fight. Okay, Charlotte, we have Charlotte in the room here from Kidscope Media. Welcome, Charlotte. I know you have a question for me.
First off, thank you for hearing my question. And recently, the number of children with mental health issues is on the rise. How is the White House positioned to help specifically kids?
So mental health issues affect so many people, including children, as you just laid out, and kids across the nation. And the COVID-19 pandemic sadly disrupted routines and relationships, and led to increases in social isolation, anxiety, and learning challenges. And so, this is something that the President and the First Lady certainly has led on this issue, and they've done that. We've done that by making sure that schools have the ability to have extra resources, to hire social workers, to hire psychologists, to hire what is needed, experts, so that children in schools in particular have an opportunity to talk to someone. And so this is certainly has been, when it comes to national mental health, this is a strategy that this administration has taken very, very seriously. And he believes that, making sure that a kid's mental health and they have the services that they need is important. And it's okay to ask for help. It is okay. It is not weakness to ask for help. And so that's why we put together this help hotline called 988. And we are telling, we're telling people, if you are having a hard time and you need someone to talk to, call 988. You can call them, you can text them, and there are experts who are going to be there to help you. And so and it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. This is such a critical question and important issue. So thank you so much for asking the question, Charlotte.
Yeah. Thanks, Corinne. Picking up on what Jeremy was asking, a couple questions. One, when did the president find out about the Louisville shooting?
He found out this afternoon or late morning.
So before or after the Easter egg roll?
I don't remember the exact timing, but he was certainly briefed on this by his senior staff. I can't tell you exactly the timing because it's been a wild day.
And has he reached out today to Mitch McConnell or Rand Paul or any other members of the Kentucky delegation?
As you know, this is a president that regularly reaches out to leaders and elected officials and in the state. I just don't have anything to read out to you as far as any calls that have been made, but certainly the president was briefed earlier today. I just don't have a specific time to outline.
And you're not aware of whether he's spoken to any other Republican lawmakers, considering he also raised the issue of Republicans in Congress need to act?
Totally understand the question. I just don't have anything to read out to you at this time.
And lastly, do you have an update on when the president might visit Nashville, where another mass shooting recently occurred?
Well, as you know, the First Lady went to Nashville for the vigil, and she clearly represented the administration and offered her condolences and support from the administration to the community and to the families that lost their 3 kids and 3 administrators. A very, very sad, horrific day. And as you know, this is a president that has visited many communities. You think about Uvalde and those 19 kids and 2 adults that were murdered. You think about Buffalo and at the grocery store when everyday people just on a Saturday doing things that many of us do on a Saturday, go shopping, and they were gunned down, and he visited there with the First Lady. And so don't have a trip to read out to you, but again, the First Lady was there just days after the shooting and offered her condolences and prayed with the family and supported the community while she was there on behalf of the administration.
Thanks, Corinne.
All right, everybody. Gosh, I'll see you on the road. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.